To start this story off and to give a little insight about me, I am an 18-year-old female who grew up in Michigan and have lived in the country for as long as I can remember. On one particular hot summer weekend, me and a couple of friends, including my boyfriend, let's call him Tony, and my older brother, let's call him Brad, decided we were going to go camping for the weekend since it was such a nice warm week. Tony's parents had owned a cabin way out in Ludington, surrounded by a huge wooded area with a personal lake and no neighbors for at least 4 miles. But being stupid teenagers, we didn't really think about that. All we were ready for was to party like any normal teens would. Well, after being there for 2 hours, our fun had started. Tony's friends had brought tons of alcohol and weed to last us for the weekend, so we wouldn't be bored since we had no service and only movies to watch. After it got around 12 a.m. and was pitch black, we had a huge bonfire going. There were a total of 6 people, including me and Tony. As we talked and laughed about upcoming events in our lives, we were so distracted that we didn't notice that my brother had literally frozen his eyes onto one section of the woods. Mind you, we were all intoxicated and high at the time. Eventually our talking ceased when Tony realized his friend and my brother had an emotionless expression. "Hey dude, you all right?" he asked. Silence. Brad didn't reply or even make any movements that would indicate he heard him. After that, I started to get scared as well as the other 2 girls there. It took a lot for my brother to act that way. Eventually, I was the first to catch on that he was excessively staring into a certain spot in the woods. I turned my head and followed his gaze the best I could. And when I finally caught on to what he was staring at, my heart dropped. There, right effing there, was, at first look, a dog. At least, that's what I thought. It was some person's dog that wandered off, but then my brain kicked in and I realized there wasn't neighbors for miles, so how could there be a dog? My mind started to race while Tony still tried to get Brad to speak or even move. In one motion, this thing stood up tall. And when I say tall, I mean freaking gigantic. It had to be at least 6 feet tall. Everyone's seen it then. How could you not? The other 2 girls and the other boy with us gasped as they finally figured out why my brother was as still as a stick. No one moved for what seemed like hours. Tony was the first to talk. "No tail," he mumbled. No one heard what he said but Brad, and I swear to you when I say his eyes widened as big as pan saucers. That freaked me out immediately. "What did you say?" one of the girls asked. "It has no freaking tail," he hissed at her. My heartbeat stopped. He was right. There was no tail on this thing. Suddenly, my clouded alcohol mind cleared up in a fraction of a second when I finally realized what this thing was. Now, I understood why my brother was basically crapping his pants. This thing was a skinwalker. My instincts kicked in right then and there, but before I could nope the F out of there, the thing let off a terrible stench like rotting meat before screaming inhuman-like. The sound was enough to scare the crap out of everyone. My brother was the first up and out of his chair and started shouting native words to the creature while I told everyone to get inside. No one questioned me when they had seen just how dead serious I was, especially Tony. He's never seen me so scared, so he knew it was a bad situation. We all hightailed it into the cabin with my brother in tow, still shouting native words at the creature, which seemed to keep it at bay, while it gave us enough time to get inside. He slammed and locked the door before turning all the lights off and grabbing a special ash from the kitchen counters and started throwing it at every window and door while chanting. Of course, he had everyone freaked out and basically in tears at that moment. After he was done, no one said a word for a long time. With all of us still in shock, he grabbed our dad's pistol and had it posted by him for hours. Everyone was entirely too shaken up to even question what happened. We must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke up to my brother packing all our stuff into the 2 cars early in the morning. I understood why. We had native family. We knew what we were dealing with, and we knew it would come back, and maybe not alone. Before we left, I did a blessing on the cabin and spoke a few calming words to the still very freaked out girls. We left as soon as everything was packed up. To this day, we still haven't explained exactly to our friends what happened that night, and they never bothered to ask us either. I live right next to a Navajo reservation and have made friends with many of the people there my age. We like to hang out, play video games, and just be normal teens. I walk over a lot since my best friend lives just a little less than a mile away from me. This isn't a long trek and usually only takes me roughly 25-30 minutes. I have made this trip dozens of times and have grown very comfortable with it. I know the people along the way, so I'm not scared or on edge. There is a patch of forest, however, about midway there. It's a little unnerving sometimes. There is always that feeling of being watched. This was a regular occurrence for me, so I try to just ignore it and shake it off as my mind playing tricks on me. This day I spent more time at my friend's house than I normally would, and when I left the house, it was already getting dark. I reached the stretch of forest right as the sun disappeared from the sky. I shivered a little as I readied myself to begin the journey through. I was 10 steps in when I heard a branch snap. You know the sound. The one that screams there's definitely someone or something there with you. I froze, not sure of what I should do next. Should I run? Should I turn around and book it back to my friend's house? I didn't know the best option in this situation. I whispered, "Hello?" hearing my voice crack as the words fell from my lips. I don't know why I even opened my mouth, but it was out there, so I listened for any reply. My heart sank when the answer came back in the sound of my voice. "Hello?" I started to breathe too fast. My heart pounded against my chest. I felt like I might faint. "Hello?" My voice came again, but not from my mouth. I wanted to run, but my feet felt cemented to the ground. I couldn't scream. I couldn't reply. My voice, it echoed over and over from a short distance away. I couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. It sounded like it was everywhere around me. "Hello? Hello? Hello?" It repeated. "Stop it!" I finally managed to tear from my lips. Everything went silent. For a long minute, nothing happened. The air grew stale, and I realized for the first time that there were no typical forest sounds. There were no bugs, no frogs or crickets. Nothing. I stood there, terrified, waiting to see what would happen next. "Stop it," it mimicked back. I had had enough and was willing my heavy legs to move. Before I could take a step, I heard rustling in the bushes 20 feet to my left. I watched in horror as a deer head with huge antlers protruded through the bush. As it came further out and stood up on twos, I took off. I flew out of those woods and all the way home in record time. I said nothing to my mom when I got there. I just went up to my room, laid down, and thought about what happened. My mother came in at some point and asked me if everything was all right. I replied that yes, I was just tired. I don't know why I didn't tell her. I guess I might have been afraid of how she would react. I called my friend and told him everything. He freaked out and told me that no matter what happened that night, that not to reply or look out my window. This terrified me even more. He said to call him the next morning and he would explain more, and that he had to speak to his grandfather as soon as possible. That night I didn't sleep at all. I stayed awake listening to every sound the night brought. Around 3 a.m., just as I was about to drift off, the air changed. The night sounds quieted. I felt my heart begin to pound. I lay there and waited, pulling the covers up over my head like a child, far too scared to move. It came after a long moment. "Hello?" I cried. It was all I could do. "Hello?" "Stop it." It mocked what I had said in the woods again. It was terrifying enough when it copied what I said, but then it did something new. It called my name. "Amy," my mother's voice. "Amy, Amy, come here." "Hello?" "Stop it." My voice again. For the rest of the night, the creature outside my window called my name in my mother's voice and repeated what I said in the words over and over. In the morning, when the sun broke through the dark, it finally stopped. I fell into a fitful sleep. I woke around 12 to my friend calling. He had spoken to his grandfather and could explain what happened to me. He said there was a creature they called Yi Naldulushi, he who goes on all fours, or a skinwalker. He explained that it was an evil witch that used dark magic to transform into animals with the attributes it required, and that it had caught my scent and knew me now. I was also given a warning that since it knew me, it would always follow me, that I would always have to be careful. Last night I heard a scratching on my window, then a low hum. The creature began saying my name again, but also adding in things I hadn't said in my mother's voice. At one point it started calling my name, but drawing it out really far, like Amy. It tried to get me to come outside or to open the door and let it in my house. This went on all night. At this point, I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. Is it seriously going to stalk the shadows around me for the rest of my life? I don't think I can take that. I was 12 at the time of this taking place in 2013. I was visiting my cottage on a relatively small lake in northern Michigan. Me and my mom like visiting this cottage a lot, but we didn't go in a while, so we thought we would go check up on the cottage. As we arrived, we knew something was different the second we pulled up to the cottage. We got out and started walking up to the front steps when our neighbor drove up and said, "Hey guys, you're finally back. Be careful, there's one of those mountain lions going around and terrorizing people." We unlocked the house and walked in to a horrible smell. We searched the house but didn't find anything. "We should check the basement," I said. We pulled up the cover to the basement and found an animal carcass that was missing its skin. It looked like someone or something used a knife and cut the skin clear off. It was about 10 p.m. by now, and we were getting ready for bed when we heard a screeching sound, so we went outside and looked around for a bit. Eventually, we found a dead deer, so we covered it up with a towel because it was right in front of the house, and then we went back inside. It was about 2 a.m. when I awoke to a loud sound outside. On my way to the front door, I grabbed our gun we keep in the cabin for emergencies. I walked to the front door and stepped out to the front step. I was walking to the tree line when I saw it, a demonic-looking deer standing over a dead wolf. It looked at me and stared with its cold, dead eyes. I still remember to this day the stare it gave me. It charged, and I raised the gun right as it raised its arm to slash. I pulled the trigger, sending it stumbling back and making it screech. I ran toward the cabin and into the front door. I left with my mom the next day and haven't returned since. That thing changed me. It makes me want to go back and finish it so no one gets hurt or killed. I told my mom what happened that night, and she said she heard rumors about a skinwalker being up there, but she never believed it until that night. A couple weeks later, my mom's friend went up there to see if he could kill the beast, so he went up to the cottage. A couple nights later, We heard that he went up there and called the cops because something was walking around the front door and scratching the windows. At one point, he said he thought he heard someone say, "It's okay, you can come out." He thought about it, but he never went out. I woke up the next morning and my mom told me that her friend had died last night and the police don't know how. The police said that they think he died of a heart attack because no marks were on his body. That cottage haunts me in my dreams. I see that thing staring at me in my dreams. If you saw it, you would be changed too.